Coffee with Caregivers production costs are covered by a partnership with United Healthcare and the National Foster Parent Association. We receive no federal or state funding and depend on our constituents and viewers to help us achieve our goals to provide support and services that meet identified needs within our mission. We would like to welcome the viewers of Coffee with Caregivers to the family. The National Foster Parent Association offers several membership opportunities for individuals, child placing agencies, and state and local affiliates. You can join today or donate at nfpaonline.org.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Coffee with Caregivers. The National Foster Parent Association is always so excited about sharing information with you that we think will be valuable to you as a caregiver or to a staff person who works with caregiver families, and certainly with the children that we all serve, as well as to their families as well. It's cool. We're here in Central Texas. Probably not as cool it is where our guest is. But for this time of year in Central Texas, it was 74 yesterday, which is like just the most wonderful coolness we could ever experience. And I think it went down to 46 last night. And so some of you that are up north are probably saying, oh, well, Irene, y'all are so spoiled, which is probably true. But we're feeling fall, and that's always kind of an exciting time when we know that the seasons are changing and the colors are changing. We got great holidays coming up for celebrating family. So many times that we can do things together as families over the next several months. So that's all very exciting. I wanted to just introduce my cup right quick before we talk with our guest. But my cup is one day at a time. And to each person seeing that and hearing that one day at a time has a different meaning for each person, for whatever going on in their life, whatever their experiences are being, and whatever they've had in the past and whatever they're looking for in the future. For me, I've mentioned to you, I'm retiring at the end of the year and trying to get all my ducks in a row and leave things for the next executive director of the NFPA in as good a shape as we can leave it. And so I was overwhelming myself with a burden really of how am I going to get all this done, all these things done, all these loose ends tied up, all these people notified, all of those things. And I just finally had to say, you know what, it's going to work out. It always does. I just have to trust in with my faith that it's going to work out. And I need to really do this one day at a time. And so that's why I chose this cup today. And I hope that's meaningful to you, that maybe it'll help you have some introspection for yourselves, about what's going on in your lives in this really busy time of the year that we're heading into. And with some probably some feelings of not sure what's going to happen and how it's all going to play out between now and the end of the year. But to always know that if we just take it one day at a time, one step at a time, one cup at a time, right, we can get through just about anything. So that being said, I'm just thrilled to have Kim Hansel on as our guest today. Kim is an exceptional woman who there are many times after I've read things that she's written and things that she's edited, especially things I wrote that I thought were good. And then she edits them and I thought, oh, well, this is 100 times better. I wish I could be Kim, because that's not one of my cup of teas, is being able to write so brilliantly and edit so beautifully. So I'm going to have Kim introduce herself and she can explain to you why those attributes that she has are so important in what she does.
Thanks, Irene. I really appreciate that. I'm Kim Hansel. I have been the editor of Fostering Families Today for about 20 years now. Mm-hmm. I really appreciate your coffee cup and what you shared, because I've certainly learned that myself in the last year and a half. which is why I brought my coffee cup that says thankful, grateful, blessed, which I got when from my nurse when I finished chemo almost exactly a year ago today. So I understand what you mean, how important it is to take a day at a time. You never know what is going to come your way. And I've certainly had to lean into that in the last year. Most of our readers didn't know that either because I wanted to just keep plugging away and I wanted them to not notice any difference in the publication because I just really believe in educating them in all there is to know about foster care so that they can make a difference for the lives and the kids in their homes. Um, so, now I'm finding my story too, which for years I've helped, especially former foster youth find their story
That's right.
and learn how to tell it. So I've spent 20 years editing, which is why I've edited some of Irene's pieces and a lot of other people's, because I think our stories are very powerful and very important to share in the time and the way that we want to share them, which is always an education piece for people, especially former foster youth, that they don't have to share everything. They don't have to share it all at once. They can share it when they want and do it in the way that makes them feel happy with what they've shared and accomplishes the goals they want. So
That's so very true. I didn't know if you were going to bring up your experience with cancer or not. And I certainly wouldn't have done it without asking you. But, certainly that's one of the reasons why I picked my cup. But I'm a cancer survivor myself. And, I live a life too where I have CAT scans every so often, PET scans every so often to see if it's because it's a recurring type of cancer, if it's back or not. And I've had one of those scares just in the last month. And, you just have to keep stepping out each day and moving forward because there's so many people who depend on what you do, so many people that depend on what I do. And I know that I'm a better person for keeping on trying and not giving up because I learn lessons every time I go through one of these scares, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes when you're getting checked for one thing, they find another thing. And so that's how they found my lung cancer the first time. The doctor thought I might have fluid in my chest. So she said, go get an x-ray. Well, lo and behold, comes back, there's something in my right lung, right? Well, it was a tumor and it was cancer. So if, what I was being checked for found something else. This time when I had the PET scan and the CAT scan, it didn't find any cancer. It found some infiltrates, what they call, but not enough to say that's a spot. But if they found another tumor that I do have to have taken out in a couple of weeks, they don't think it's malignant because a PET scan didn't light up there. So we're pretty sure it's not. But when you have those kinds of things happen, I always think too about what do I share and what don't I? I know that I have a lot of people who care about me and will pray for me if I just say, please do. And yet then I'm like, but is that selfish, putting it out there? I'm sure you've had to have those same thoughts over the last couple of years for yourself as well. And as time moves forward, because again, we're going to be checked for this kind of stuff probably the rest of our lives, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that was, it really made me appreciate what these foster youth go through in reality. Like the re-triggering, the re-traumatizing, the nerves that go along with each scan, like how do those kids feel every time they go to a different home? How do they feel when they get removed in the first time and placed into foster care? How do, and I've had the privilege to work with so many brave young people who have shared some of the hardest things I've ever, read. And I'm just, I couldn't be quiet after a while because I just didn't feel like I was going to be doing my work justice and encouraging them to share their stories and be empowered in what they're sharing. So I decided it was probably time that I share my own. And I haven't changed. The whole magazine, the whole point of it, as far as I'm concerned, is to educate people and to educate them on, what these kids go through. How can we do a better job for these kids? What can we do that make them feel seen and heard? And so that's the same point in me sharing my story, is just a little bit of an education of, people live with this. It's difficult, but we have full lives and we can still work and keep up with our kids kind of some days and do
Yeah,
all of those things. So
for sure. Oh my goodness. And there are so many survivors out there, not just cancer, but like you said, of so many things. And I've been doing quite a bit of work in the last few years with survivors of human trafficking. And wow, and some of those because of foster care or because they ran from foster care or whatever, others just for all kinds of reasons. And the trauma that they deal with and the triggers that seem to be there at every time they turn around, and I'm like you, try to put in perspective how small mine is. Sometimes I think compared to theirs, right? And it kind of makes humbles me for sure, and that I should get over myself and, really still put my energy into making sure that children and families are safe and they don't have to go through all of this stuff that these kids do. And, I think we're working on that. Society's working on that. We're trying to figure out better ways to do that. And one of the things about Fostering Families Today magazine is, you're right, the educational piece is tremendous. And you're so timely on topics all the time. I mean, it's amazing. I'm one of those people who can't wait to get it because I've got to read it. And I get so much insight oftentimes that I still need. And no matter how long I've been doing this kind of work, you never know it all. I mean, you can't, because everybody's story is different and it affects them differently. So it's a learning process for all of us who work in this industry, who volunteer in this industry, who give ourselves to the families and children, to just always remember we don't know enough. We'll never know enough. If we think we know enough, then we probably should quit, because we're not going to do I truly believe that we're not going to be doing our best then for the next child and family that we hope to influence and help. So I would love for you to give us some history about the magazine, kind of its early years and how that grew, and then kind of how you got to the point where you are now.
Sure. So Fostering Families Today was actually started after Adoption Today was started. And our founding publisher, Richard Fisher, he adopted 2 girls from China. And it was through that process that he just felt that there wasn't enough information out there, and that was kind of on the cusp of when the internet was really just starting. And he felt like that there needed to be a place for families to go when they needed more information in their adoption process and raising kids who came to their families through adoption. And it was just a short time after he started Adoption Today that somebody said, well, foster parents really don't have anything.
Yeah.
So he started Fostering Families Today. We just celebrated 20 years last year. And from the very get-go, he just felt like the people who you needed to learn from were the people who lived the experience. So his very first editors were young people who'd been adopted. They brought a lot of, just knowledge and wealth and information to that position. And then, I came on board. So I've been doing this right about 20 years myself. And I've just spent the last, 20 years trying to focus on what do people need to know? What do they need to learn? And the things that we know now that we didn't 20 years ago is just remarkable. The brain science that behind it all, the new research, the things that we know are just amazing. So I worked with Richard for, I think, probably close to 15 years, and he passed away from colon cancer, stage 4 colon cancer, and which was very difficult. I mean, he and I worked very closely together for so long, and he just had such a heart for the kids. He just that's all he cared about, was making a difference for the kids. And I'm so fortunate that before he passed away, we started a relationship with Fostering Media Connections. At the time, they were doing the Chronicle of Social Change and just doing some really good journalism. And that's kind of like my background is in with a journalism degree. And I just wanted, it just felt right. It felt like a great partnership. So we've been under their umbrella now for, I think, going on, I think this will be our 4th year. And so and we've just been able to reach more people and do more things since we've been able to partner with them. They did a rebranding, so they're now the Imprint, and it's pretty much a go-to place for all juvenile justice, child welfare related topics that are just reported on by some just amazing journalists who are really focused on getting down to the full story. We also have a program called Youth Voice, where we work with young people who have been involved in those systems to share their stories. And then we have Fostering Families Today. So, and we're just a great group of people, and we all just are so dedicated to this work. So it's been a really great place to land. And I feel like Richard would just be so proud of where things are right now.
I think you would be too. I really do.
It's nice to be able to talk about him sometimes.
Yeah. So at what point in that 20 years did y'all kind of partner with the National Foster Parent Association, and then kind of tell us a little bit about what that looks like now?
Yeah, so I would say it was probably in the early 2000s that I decided that we needed to hear the voices of the leaders in the community. So I reached out and offered pages to people such as NFPA, Foster Care Alumni of America, some of those different organizations, so that they could really, talk to their people about, the things that they felt were important. So we've had that partnership with you guys for many, many, many years. And so it's really nice to be able to have, the leading organization for foster adoptive families being able to share, kind of your mission and your guidance as well. And I know you've written and several other people have written for us over the years. And so it's just been a really nice partnership.
Yeah, for those folks that aren't familiar with the magazine, it is published every 2 months. So there's a big 6 issues a year. And it's a generous magazine. It has really a lot of good, sound information in it. And I had a lady ask me one time, well, why don't they do it monthly? And I said, well, it takes manpower to do that. And, but I don't know if you get the same quality you get every 2 months. You get I think a bigger magazine than you'd get if it was once a month. I said, I know that just having people write articles for the magazine and, try to fit into the theme of the magazine and that sort of thing isn't as easy as it sounds sometimes. And but I think people need to know that it's in every 2 months and the quality is wonderful. And the other thing that, you've been doing for a long time too is under your editorial board is usually the president or the executive director of the National Foster Parent Association is listed in there. And people recognize that. And I've had, folks comment, oh, I see your name every time I open that magazine and I look at that, your name is in there. And I said, yeah, it's important to know that we have partners that appreciate what caregiver families do, resource parents of all kinds, and want to hear, from them again, as the people who live the life 24/7. It's a compliment to the youth who have lived it 24/7, right? And sometimes we say the same things as they do, and sometimes it's a little bit different, and because of their perspective and when they were in care, and the perspective of the foster parents about who those kids were at the time. But I think it's interesting then have dialogue with those alumni about perceptions and how their perceptions have changed as they get older. Especially for those who become parents. I've had just some of the most incredible discussions with these young folks that I just thought, that they were just the meanest people in the world, my foster parents, and, they had too many rules and there was too much structure. And then now I've got my 2 kids and I'm like, oh my God, I got to have more than what I was experiencing. And I thought they were being awful to me, that kind of thing. And so, as we get older and we have our own life experiences, we start seeing things from a different perspective as well. And I remember one of the leaders of the Alumni of America, we were talking one time and he was about ready to step down from in the leadership role and let the new person come in and kind of take over. And he just said, one of the things I'm really going to miss is I get these calls from these alumni and they're just so down on the system and saying that all their foster homes are horrible and, just so angry yet. And they're 19, 20, 21 years old. And he said, I always say, do you have time to talk like 45 minutes? And he said, I'm always so excited when they say yes. He said, because by the time I get through talking to them, they're starting to say, well, you know what? You're right. That foster home, they really did help me in a lot of ways. Yeah, that other foster family did too. And well, it really wasn't that bad. And, I know why they were doing that stuff. And so this is an alumni guy who was in his 40s already. So he had a lot of life experiences that he had lived since his time in care. And he said, I try to utilize that when I get these angry calls that kids that are said their life was ruined because of foster care, and to put some perspective to really thinking about each place that they lived, the families they lived with, the institutions they may have experienced, and to try to glean, from the perspective of were they looking out for my best interest, whether I knew it or not, whether I liked it or not. Most teenagers don't like the rules their parents put in place for them anyway, and it has nothing to do with being in foster care, and to put perspective back. And he said, it's amazing how many of them, all it takes is that 45-minute talk and they see life already different. And he said, when they're able to say it out loud and start thinking about it, they start functioning different as well. So I think that's just, a piece of what they do. It's a piece of what the magazine is able to do for those youth. They're informing us about how they felt about all these things and how it affected their lives. But it also gives them an opportunity to really think through those experiences and to see, how valid are those feelings that they have and those memories they have? And do they need to look at it kind of in a different way sometimes? So that's a blessing to everybody, not only the people who write the articles, but those who get to read them as well.
Well, I wasn't a parent when I started the publication. And so I feel like I've kind of raised my kids with it. They're my biological kids. I have 2 teenagers now, so, pray for me. But, everything I work on has been so relevant to them. And you see where, the articles that talk about brain development and what that looks like. And I think that's a lot of what, you're talking about is where is their brain development at some of those stages, and how we look at life perspective. And I certainly know that, the way I work with my teenagers is often, take a step back, take a deep breath, they're just need to feel this moment, too. So, but these kids, they've been through a lot, and I do think it's important for them to, and I won't like make any like excuses, because sometimes they do have very, very bad experiences. But I think all of them take away something, I hope good too, from
Mhm.
their experiences. And I know I'm always reminded of your story that you shared one time about the young woman who was only in your home for just the holidays, and how impactful that was. And I just, I always think about that one very much. So
Yeah, you never know. None of us know every act of kindness that we do. And now we're hear a lot about random acts of kindness. Go out and do them, right? And some people are going to appreciate what you do for them, and others are not. And that's up to them, because they have to be open to wanting to feel good about something and accept the kindness. But I think that, families that in particular, whether it's foster or adoptive or kinship families, who really do step up um, to make a difference for a child and hopefully for their whole family, you never oftentimes see the results of the fruits of your labor. And that can be very frustrating. And for families who don't hang in there a long time, they lose sight of kind of the important work that they did, because they're not around long enough for kids to come back and find them, or they move away and nobody knows where they're at. I got kids now, that they still find me on Facebook. They're looking. And they're in their 30s and 40s now, right? And they got, and said, well, what happened when y'all moved? And then you didn't have the same phone number or address anymore. And we didn't know where they were, so
right.
it's just so interesting to catch up with some of these young people, and to see where they are in their life and what they are accomplishing. And most of them are making it. I mean, I've had a few calls from the penitentiaries too, and this one young man, well, I guess he was almost probably 28, I guess, when I got the phone call from a chaplain at a penitentiary. And he said, I need to ask you, I have an inmate here who is trying to find people who were his foster parents. And so I've been searching the names, and I finally came up with that. I think maybe y'all are the people. And I said, well, we were foster parents for 27 years. So you probably got the right ones, who are you calling on behalf of? And he told me, and I went, oh my goodness. Boy, what a tough kid that was. And absolutely to no fault of his own. Oh my Lord. But he said he has no visitors. He never gets any mail. He's alone. And he said, when I said to him the other day, son, isn't there somebody that loves you? And he said, well, yeah, but I don't know where they are. I don't know. I know they moved. I don't know where they're at. And he said, well, if you give me their information, I will get a hold of them. I mean, he was 14 when he left us, right? But son, isn't there somebody out there who loves you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I was just
foster parents of all
yeah,
things.
I was just talking to a friend who they are pretty new to fostering, but they'd had a couple of kids for 6 months to a year. I don't remember, but they've stayed connected even though the kids have reunified. And I just looked over at her, because I know what most people say, like, oh, I could never do that. And I just said, I'm so proud of you. I am so proud that you put those boys first, and that you're still there for them, because that's what being called to do this work is. it's not easy. It's
No.
putting aside your own emotions and, you know, attachments and being just what that kid needs for that moment in time.
Right.
And, you know, that they can remain connected now that they're reunified. I'm like, to me, there's no more beautiful story than that one.
Right. I agree. Well, it's like this guy, when he went home, he wasn't home but a couple of months and did some illegal things and was put in a juvenile detention center and then moved like 400 miles away. So it was away from his mother, away from the sister he had, who's had now passed on, and away from us. And he would call every 3 months, collect. He'd get one call every 3 months, collect. And he would call us, and from the 14 until he was 18. And he would always ask, have you seen my mother? Can you check on my mother? Can you make sure she's okay? Can you send her some money if she needs money? I mean, he spent that 4 years worried about his mother. And then when he got out of the juvenile system, I mean, he moved to New York and and we didn't know where he was. We knew he was in New York. He had told us that he was going there, but he was going to go work on roofs in New York. And so that's when we lost contact with him and didn't hear back from him. And then when we found out that he had been incarcerated for DWI manslaughter. And, you know, when the chaplain reached out again, it was like, okay, how can I communicate with him? You know, what's he allowed? And what does he enjoy doing? I mean, is there something we can do for him besides write him letters, which we started to do right away? And he said, well, you know, he really likes to read. And I said, well, what does he read? Well, it's science fiction and murder and all this kind of stuff. And I said, well, can I send him some books, but they won't be those kind of books? And the chaplain laughed. He said, well, what kind will they be? I said, self-help books. And he said, okay, those are acceptable, you know? So I started every couple of months, I'd go out and find another self-help book that, you know, might be appropriate for him. And I'd have to, you know, buy it at a legitimate bookstore because they have to ship it to the jail. You can't mail a book to a jail anymore. I mean, all those kinds of things that I had to learn all over again. But it was interesting because, you know, I'd say, you know, in my letters, tell me what you're learning from the last book that I sent to you. And I'd like for you to tell me if you think that's going to help you. And if not, I'll look for a different kind of book. And he was reading the books. I mean, it was obvious that he was reading those books. Then when he was actually ready to get out, was being let out of prison, he settled in, and in the auto crash that he caused, he had been injured severely too. So he had a bum leg and he had a hard time getting job afterwards and all kinds of stuff. But he met a woman and they settled down, and, you know, he has a life now. And he said to me, he said, you know, and this was via phone, he said, you know, I just don't think I'd be where I am today if it wasn't for all those books you made me read. And he said, but I understand why you did it now. You know, it was like tough love kind of thing. But he knew that we cared about him. So when foster parents and kinship caregivers and I mean, everybody that, regardless of how long you've been with a child or had them, you make an imprint in their life. I mean, that's just the way it is. And it's in there somewhere. And I truly believe that some seed you planted at some point is going to start growing. And they're going to recognize that as something that came from you. And I don't think there's any greater reward than to know that you had a positive effect on somebody's life who at many points thought nobody cared about them at all. So again, I think that we're preaching to the choir out there, probably to the folks that are listening. But if we do have some listeners who are new to caregiving, are thinking about quitting because it's just getting too hard. I always had to go back over 27 years. There were times when I'm like, I can't do this one more day. It just isn't going to work. And yet we kept doing it. And that's what the kids, they needed us. We needed them more than we knew until they weren't there anymore. We laugh about, we have our 5 kids, and they've been prolific and given us 23 grandchildren and now 4 great grandchildren with 2 more in production, actually. And then we start counting the other grandchildren we have that are from our former foster youth that lived with us, that every time they have another baby, they call and say, okay, you grandma and grandpa again, boy, the numbers really start going up when that happens. But making a difference, they really never forget the good stuff. And I just hope that people will always be open to hearing back from kids who experienced their family in some way over the years, and being able to finally figure out that. And there have been kids like this young man I was telling you about. I really thought we had been horrible failures with him, truly horrible failures. And to come to find out, he felt like we were the only 2 people who loved him.
Well, I think I see those stories all the time, of people really struggling with the behaviors that some of these kids come with and feeling like they're failures. And they have challenges, and so trying to find the resources to help them, to guide them through some of those difficulties so that they're not giving up,
Right.
are difficult to find. And so, that's another thing, reason why I try to put the pieces I put in the magazine, because I know how much they need that. They need that reflection of their own story. They need the resources for help. They just need, I always laugh and say, it's something that you can just go hide out in the bathroom for 5 minutes, because we all know, like, that's a challenge to get 5 minutes away sometimes from our kiddos. Right. So, that's something that it's always there for them, to be able to look at. So.
Absolutely. Well, Kim, I think our time is about up. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this, and for sharing your personal story too. It means a lot. I'm going to say one more thing I probably shouldn't say, but I'm going to do it. With your curly hair, and I too had a major physical issue in the last 2 years that caused me to lose most of my hair. And I had straight hair, and now I have curly hair. And guess what? Kim lost most of her hair, and she's got curly hair. So now every time I talk with Kim, we talk about, at least I talk about my curly hair, because I don't know what to do with it. And I'm having to learn how to look different and work with my hair. So it's always nice to know somebody. And I have a friend now that's going through the same thing here, Kim, and she's like laughing her head off now. Her hair's starting to grow back, and it's growing back early as well.
Yeah. I'll actually say the magazine helped me there too, because all these articles I've written all these years about textured hair, I'm like, you guys have some really good products.
That's exactly right.
So it's been very helpful.
Okay, well, we're going to go. Do you have any final thing you would like to share with our audience before we close?
I mean, I'm excited. We're going to have a couple of new special issues next year, and we're going to hopefully be doing some new webinars, and there'll be some new exciting things to check out. So, just visit us on our Facebook page or our website, and, hopefully, and drop us a line if you ever have tips on things that you want to read about. I'm always open to suggestions. So.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you so much. And thanks to everybody who watch today's episode. I'll remember that they're all archived on our website and on our YouTube channel. So if you want to go back and look at some oldies but goodies, they're there for you as well. Bye, everybody.
This episode is brought to you in partnership with our friends at United Healthcare. For more information about United Healthcare, please visit www.uhc.com.